What are the stories that from your culture about the utilization of what we would call magic now, which was more, I think, a part of everyday life in this more mystical access to the divine and to spirit. Merlin, as I understand it, was not one person, but was a title of like a wizard. That was the head wizard. That was the guy.
So there's when you think about the kind of the history of the island of Ireland, which is off the west coast, is as far west in Europe as you can go. The next parish is New York. And so in some sense, we're really cut off a lot. So there were only a few kind of waves of immigrants who came at various stages. So at one stage, you had a group called the Tuatha De Danann, called the people of the goddess Dana. And the mythology says that they were actually refugees from Atlantis. And so in Gaelic, we have two terms for that place. One of the terms is called Tír na Nóg, which means the land of the ever young, which is actually what I call this place here. My land I call Tír na Nóg. And the other name we had for it was Tír Fáthán, which means the land under the waves. So the belief system that refugees, after the sinking of Atlantis, some of them went to Mesoamerica, and some of them came eastwards, and some of them landed in Ireland. And we call them the Tuatha De Danann, the people of the goddess Dana. And they were these mythical characters with this extraordinary technology, not necessarily machine technology, they may have evolved that, but kind of mental technology, intuition, prophecy, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, psychokinesis, stuff like that. So in many senses, they were magicians. And they kind of ruled Ireland for I know many thousands of years. And then the Celts came about 600 BCE, and they came from Eastern Europe and came through Spain, Portugal, and up the west coast of Europe and landed in Ireland. And there were two famous battles between the Tuatha De Danann and the Celts at a place called, I remember the name in a minute, but the Celts won both battles. So there was an agreement made between the two groups that they would divide the land of Ireland equally between them. They divide, but it wasn't that one group got the east and the other got the west, or one got the north and the other got the south. The Celts got all of Ireland above the ground, and the Tuatha De Danann got all of Ireland beneath the ground. So they shapeshifted, and they became what is known afterwards as the fairy folk, or the Leprechauns. Leprechaun in Gaelic is Laur Chapán, which literally means little-bodied, tiny people, so that they literally could shapeshift, and that they could change their morphology and change their kind of the size and their density of who they were, and that they literally went underground and created, their own version of Atlantis under land rather than, above the land. And so we have this notion then that these were magicians, these are the Merlins of the world, who had all those extraordinary abilities, and that was lost by the Celts and subsequent groups, who put more kind of focus on a kind of a technological kinds of machine technology rather than mental technology. So for us, Irish growing up in that mythology, we would totally accept the fact that these beings are real. Leprechauns, fairy folk, whatever, gnomes, water sprites, tree spirits, they're absolutely real. But you have to have a special kind of vision to see it, or there are special times of the year. So in Gaelic, we call special places like groves of trees or mountaintops or lakes, we call them chaoloites. A chaoloite means a thin place, a place where the veil between the mystical and the mundane is diaphanous, and where, you can kind of go through it, literally walk through it on some occasions, particularly in some famous festivals, like the 1st of February we call Fiara, and then the 1st of May we call Bealtaine, and the 1st of August we call Lunasa, and the 1st of November we call Samhain. And these are times when the veil is especially thin, and you can literally walk through it, or beings come through from both sides. And I'm raised with that kind of stuff, expecting, those kinds of encounters. And so when my great-grandmother, who was alive until I was about 10 years of age, when I heard her speaking to Mother Mary, out loud, and I'm privy to this conversation, that was completely natural to me. She could see through the veil. I couldn't, unfortunately, but I could hear her. So I was privy to one side of the conversation. I was totally convinced that she was real, and this was a real conversation. And so that came kind of second nature to me, that this is our birthright, but we've forfeited it, that we've developed knowledge instead of wisdom. And I define them very differently. For me, knowledge is data which are generated by the sensorium and processed by the brain. whereas wisdom is data that are generated by the soul and processed by the heart. So it's a very different kind of relationship to truth. And that the mystics, you know, they have both wisdom and knowledge. They're able to exist in the physical world, and that's why I coined the term mysticist, that somebody who can operate in the physical world, you know, and be able to, you know, grow their food or kind of drive a car or whatever, but that's not their home base. Their home base is the mystical, and they can only access that through wisdom. You know, so reason is not going to get you, which is why Jesus insisted on only speaking in parables and stories, and his audience were pissed with him. You know, there's a great passage in Matthew's Gospel in chapter 13 where on 2 occasions they said to him, "Why are you always talking the stupid stories? You know, talk plainly to us." And he gives 2 different answers. The first time he said, "I speak in parables so that seeing you may see, but not understand, hearing you may hear, but not comprehend." He's saying, if you're listening to me with your ears and trying to understand me with your brain, you're not going to get it. And the second time he was asked, he said, "I speak in parables so that I may reveal things which have been hidden since the foundation of the world." In other words, dudes, there are some truths which are so deep, you can't articulate them in philosophical terminology or in kind of scientific parlance. You got to go someplace else. You got to dance it. You got to sing it. You got to play it on a musical instrument. You have to go plant medicine or whatever. That's the way you can get to that place. You can't get that through your brain.